Hey there, this is Daniel from the Southwest Florida Real Estate Channel. We're going to be taking a look at negotiating as a buyer. So there are some basic items that you're going to be looking at when you go to purchase real estate. So you got your basic moving parts in a purchase contract, okay? So you've got your, I'll just call it purchase price, PP. So you got your purchase price. You've got your terms, okay? So terms basically means financing terms. You've got earnest money, and you've got close date. And then I'll just call it contingencies. And so what we've got here is, first of all, the purchase price. This is the primary thing that people generally tend to kind of get stuck on and focus on when they're negotiating on their property, their purchase. And the thing is, the majority right now, as of, this is the beginning of May 2015, right now properties are being purchased for about 98% of the list, their asking price. So if I list a property for $100,000, it's reasonable to expect that I'm going to sell it for about $98,000. Again, if I list that same property for $1 million, it's not reasonable. So this is just in general as far as properties that sell. Of course, the starting point has to be a property that's listed at a proper price. But as far as purchase price, what can happen is that you've got a buyer who says something along the lines of, well, let's put in a lowball offer and see what happens. Well, what you really need to realize is that there are no responsibilities on the other party. My brokerage gets phone calls all the time. Somebody says, I made a full price offer, they didn't respond, I'm suing them. And I go, for what? What's the action that you're going to take? And they say, I don't know, I hope you tell me. And I say, I don't know, you tell me. There's no responsibility there. So any offer can be either accepted, rejected, or rejected and countered. So there's no responsibility ever on anybody's party to accept an offer. That's not how this works. And so if I list a property for $100,000 and you write a $100,000 offer, I can either accept it, I can reject it, or reject it and counter. I've got no legal responsibility to you whatsoever. So for example, let's just say I'm asking $100,000 and you write an offer for $150,000 on seller financing with no cash down payment, and you promise to refinance it out and close and take legal ownership within 150 years. Well, that's, you've messed around with my terms, you've messed around with the timing, and so I've got no responsibility to accept that offer under any circumstances. So here, just remember that when you're looking at the price. And then terms, what terms means is financing. A couple things related to terms. What you've got in your purchase and sale contract is what's called financing addendum, or a financing contingency. That contingency, what it does is it says that I'm going to get a certain interest rate for a certain number of years. This is assuming we're financing. Or, by the way, the terms could be cash. But I'm going to get a certain interest rate for a certain number of years, and if I don't, then I'm not going to have to purchase this property. So standard contingency time period in the state of Florida is 5 business days. So here's what it means. If this offer is accepted, the buyer's got 5 business days from that moment to lock in an interest rate. Let's say that our financing terms, the language we put in the purchase and sale contract, says 30 years and 3.5%. What that means is, what we're saying is that you're going to get financing, you're going to borrow the money for 30 years, and you're going to get an interest rate that's at least that good. So what we're saying is that if it's not at least that good, in other words, your interest rate is 3.51% or 3.6%, what we're saying is if the interest rate gets worse than this by going up, we're not going to have to buy the property. So your standard language in the contract says that we're going to lock the interest rate in within 5 business days of acceptance of this purchase contract. And then what you're going to have to do is your real estate agent, the buyer's agent, they're going to have to take a copy of that purchase and sale contract and a copy where there's this language and send it to the lender. See, federal law, a lender is not allowed to lock an interest rate on a person. They've got to lock it on an address. They can't just say to you, I like you very much, here's an interest rate. That's against the law. What they're required to do is wait until you're in a purchase and sale contract, and as I say, the majority of the language in your standard contract says 5 business days. So just think about like a stock market ticker. So just think about it's changing all the time, right? People are buying and selling money and whatever. And so what happens is that lender, they can change, that rate can change based on all kinds of things in the economy. And during that 5-year period, that lender along with the buyer should be in contact with each other and be discussing this, and that lender should be asking, when do you want to lock this in? Here's what's going on tomorrow. Here's what's going on right now. Here's what might be going on tomorrow, rather. And lock in that rate. And if that rate locks in too high, because of that and that alone, that buyer's got the right to get whatever earnest money back that they've already given, get out of that contract. There's no legal protections at that point for the seller. The buyer can cancel and be done with it just because of that alone. Now, if the interest rate is 3, and we've locked it in after whatever, 5 business days, that's the end of it, and that protection is gone, okay? The other part of the terms is we're going to specify how much of this is down payment, where the money is coming from. So it's very standard to say that we're going to start out, we're going to have a 10% down payment or a 20% down payment. A lot of first-time home buyers, younger buyers right now, a huge, a percentage of them, around 50% right now, are going FHA. That FHA financing, what they're doing is putting 3.5% down payment, they're borrowing the other 96.5%, and then what they're doing is they're purchasing an insurance policy that's from HUD, Housing and Urban Development, from the government, their insurance policy called the FHA, and what they do then is they pay for the insurance. There's an upfront premium that they've got to pay to the lender, and then there's also an annual premium that's paid monthly to the lender. So there is an additional expense if you go 3.5% down payment. Of course, the positive thing about it is that they're coming in with, instead of 20 or 10% down, they're only putting 3.5% down. All right, so earnest money then, look, sometimes as a real estate agent, what you do is you say, hey, tell you what, your purchase, you're offering, only 95% of the asking price. So why don't you give them a big chunk of earnest money, make them feel a little bit better? Why don't you, put 20 or 30% down when you buy it, make them feel a little bit better? So there are some other moving parts. Close. So your close date, that's a negotiable piece, and this is one of the things that commonly you make an agreement and it ends up getting moved, or it gets changed for some reason. But just know that this is a negotiable part. If you offer, to buy it for 100% of the asking price, and your close date is 5 months from now, your offer may get beat by another offer where they say they're going to buy it for 98% of the asking price, but they're going to buy it tomorrow for cash. So in other words, these are all different moving parts. And then contingencies. So you've got a number of different contingencies. I'll take you through some of them. If you've got a property, a residential property, residential in the state of Florida, what it means is a 1-unit, a 2-unit, so that would be a duplex, a 3-unit, a triplex, those are very uncommon, or a quad, okay, that would be 4 units, and up to 10 acres, okay? So just think about you've got a residence, a single-family home, and it's on 6 acres, that's considered residential, okay? So on those, what happens is if the property was built before 1976, the individual receives what's called a lead-based paint addendum, meaning they've got the right to have, they've got a 10-day right, federal law, to get the property inspected for lead-based paint, okay? So that's a protection. Another protection that's very, very, very important in the state of Florida is a home inspection protection. And so when I say protection, I mean a contingency. It gets written into the contract by your agent if they know what they're doing. And so what you do is the home inspection, here's why I say it's really important in the state of Florida. The state of Florida has statewide laws that say that a city and county, they are not allowed to hold up a real estate transaction in order to uphold city and county ordinances. What that ordinance is, that means small government law, like a city law that says that the electric or whatever, the plumbing has to be up to code. The state of Florida has said, and by the way, this is kind of, there's a lot of law that's in Florida that is designed to get a lot of people come down here and bring them from up north or other countries to bring their money with them. And so what they're doing is they're saying, for example, we've got a septic system, or we've got a water system, or we've got an electrical system that's not up to code. The state of Florida has passed a law that says you're not allowed to stop a transaction because of that fact. No city is allowed to require somebody to get up to code in order to have a transaction. And that is very, very, very uncommon. And what it means is it becomes even more important than in other states to have a home inspection done. You got to have somebody come in there and say, look, this electrical system was installed by Thomas Edison. There's all these little plugs in the wall, and this is not okay. You got to have the seller fix this. So that home inspector, it really comes down to them because the city's not even allowed to get involved in that. So that's that. Then the other thing, a really big protection here for the buyers, you got appraisal. So an appraisal, assuming that there's financing, an appraisal is going to be ordered and it has to appraise. What this means is, let's just say we're in a purchase contract to buy it for $100,000 and the appraisal comes in at $75,000, that property did not appraise. Okay, and so what that means is you've got a problem. You've got a seller and a buyer who've decided that the property is worth far more than it's actually worth, according to the appraiser. And what the appraiser will do then is they're holding up the transaction. You've got options at this point. One option is have the buyer show up with some more cash. Okay, so there's less financing. Another option is have the seller drop the purchase price. Another option is they both walk away, and sometimes that happens. Or sometimes you get an appraiser who has work orders. They say, you know what, what I need to do in order to get from there to there, and this is a pretty ridiculous difference here, so it wouldn't work. But let's just say the difference between $100,000 and $98,000, you're off by $2,000. You might have an appraiser that says, I need work orders. Work orders means that they're requiring the seller to do some things to get it up to snuff, so to speak. So anyway, these are all the negotiating parts on behalf of the buyer. And the bottom line is this. Buyer, when you go through there, your agent should be walking you through the property, asking you what you want related to fixtures. In other words, if it's not physically attached, it's not real estate. If you want it, if you want the lawnmower, if you want the Picasso that's on the wall, you got to have your buyer's agent. You got to have your agent write that into the purchase and sale contract. Otherwise, it's not staying. So those things you get a bill of sale for rather than a deed, and they got to be written into the contract. So what we got to do there is sit down. Talk to the buyer. You got to talk to your agent about this, and basically fill this thing out in a way that if it gets signed, it'll make you smile. In a way that is acceptable for you to buy this. And the bottom line is, first offer should be your best offer because you never know what a seller's going to do in response. So that's negotiating on behalf of the buyer.